In the heart of Kenya's Masai Mara, where the golden plains stretch endlessly beneath the African sun, a legend reigned. His name was Notch. His mane, dark and heavy, was the crown of a king. His roar carried across the valleys, a sound that spoke of strength, dominance, and an empire built on fear and respect. For years, Notch had held power over the Marsh Pride, one of the most famous prides of the Mara. With his strength, he guarded his territory, his lionesses, and above all, the fragile lives of the cubs that depended on his protection. Around him, the rhythm of the savannah seemed eternal, unshaken and unchallenged. But even the greatest kings cannot silence time. Far from the safety of the pride, another story was unfolding. Tamu, a lioness once belonging to the Marsh Pride, lived in exile. She had been pushed out, forced to survive alone. Yet in her solitude, she carried a secret. She had given birth to Notch's cubs. Alone with 4 fragile lives clinging to her side, Tamu faced a reality harsher than any kingdom. No pride sisters to help her hunt. No dominant male to defend her young. Just the endless dangers of the Mara, buffalo herds, prowling hyenas, rival lions, and starvation waiting at every turn. Still, the fire in her eyes revealed something unshakable. Tamu would fight for her cubs, even if the whole savannah turned against her. Back in the pride, Notch seemed untouchable. His sons were growing into fierce young males, their muscles strengthening with each hunt, their confidence swelling under his shadow. Together, they presented a wall of dominance few dared to test. But the Mara does not honor crowns forever. Rival males roamed beyond the horizon, listening to his roars, waiting for weakness. Time itself was carving lines into Notch's face, weighing down his once unstoppable body. He was still a king, but kings are only kings until someone stronger comes to take it all away. And while he ruled with iron power, his estranged lioness, Tamu, was waging a battle far more desperate. Not for a throne, not for dominance, but for the very survival of her bloodline. On a quiet evening, the Mara seemed to hold its breath. Notch lay in the tall grass, his mane shifting in the wind, eyes closed as if the kingdom itself was his to dream upon. Yet even in that peace, danger buzzed around him, small, invisible, persistent. A bee landed upon his nose, a tiny irritation to a giant. He flicked it away with indifference. But in that simple image, the truth of all empires was written. Sometimes it is not the lion that chooses when to fall, but the world around him that decides. The bee flew away. The king returned to his rest. But the savannah had already begun writing the next chapter, a chapter of loss, betrayal, and survival against impossible odds. This is the story of a king whose throne would tremble, and of a mother who, against every law of the wild, would fight to keep her cubs alive. The tale of Notch and Tamu, a story of power, sacrifice, and the eternal struggle between legacy and survival. The Mara was watching. The storm was coming. In the wild, survival is never promised. For a lioness without a pride, it is almost impossible. Yet Tamu walked this path alone, carrying the weight of 4 fragile cubs who depended on her for every breath, every meal, every heartbeat. Each sunrise brought new trials. She had no hunting sisters to share the chase, no watchful males to shield her young. Every step outside the grass that hid her family was a gamble. Hunger stalked her as surely as the predators that prowled the Mara. Her life had narrowed to a single purpose: protect the cubs at all costs. One morning the earth shook. A herd of Cape buffalo thundered across the plains. For Tamu, they were both a threat and a potential feast. But buffalo are not prey for a lioness alone. They are armored tanks of muscle and horns, unpredictable and lethal. She crouched low in the grass, heart pounding, cubs huddled behind her. The herd shifted, the air filled with the stench of their breath, their eyes glinting with suspicion. One bull stopped, head lowered, nostrils flaring, then came the charge. The bull lunged forward, earth exploding beneath its hooves. Tamu leapt sideways, teeth bared, swiping desperately to draw its rage away from the cubs. The giant beast swung its head, missing her by inches, and plowed into the brush. Her cubs were safe, and this time, but the warning was clear. Even the grass that sheltered them could turn into a battlefield without notice. For days, Tamu hunted in silence, chasing gazelles and warthogs, often failing, sometimes wounded by the escape of her prey. A lioness alone is at a disadvantage. Success was rare, and when it came, it was never enough for 5 mouths. Her ribs showed through her golden skin, but she never stopped. Each bite she earned, she gave first to the cubs. They tore into scraps while she stood guard, her own hunger gnawing at her belly. The Mara does not forgive weakness, and weakness, Tamu knew, could cost everything. But buffalo and hunger were only part of the danger. Across the plains roamed nomadic males, young, strong, and restless. They were lions with no pride, desperate for power, searching for females to mate and cubs to kill. For them, Tamu's little family was a target. If they found her cubs, they would slaughter them instantly. For in the wild, a male's instinct is to destroy the bloodline of rivals, ensuring only his own legacy remains. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low, Tamu's ears twitched. The unmistakable rumble of male lions echoed across the wind. She froze. The cubs whimpered softly. Through the grass, 2 dark shapes moved closer. Muscular, confident, their manes thick with youth. They were sniffing, searching. Tamu lowered her body, her heart hammering. If they found the cubs, it would be over. She led her little ones into the reeds, guiding them silently into the marshy waters. The mud clung to their fur, the cold biting at their small bodies. Yet silence was survival. For hours they hid, the nomads prowling just beyond. At last the wind shifted. The males turned and moved on. Tamu had saved them, but the message was cruelly clear. Their lives were hanging by a thread, one discovery away from destruction. Days later, the danger returned, sharper, more violent. A lone male, larger than the others, caught Tamu off guard. He lunged from the shadows, his roar shattering the evening silence. Tamu stood her ground, claws out, teeth bared, a storm of fury in her eyes. She had no chance against him, yet she launched herself forward, slashing at his muzzle, driving him back from the cubs. The battle was chaos. Dust swirled, roars thundered, the cubs scattered in terror. For a moment, Tamu lost sight of them, and then silence. The intruder withdrew, blood dripping from his nose, his fury unsatisfied. He vanished into the grass, leaving behind the wreckage of the fight. Tamu turned, calling frantically for her cubs. Only 3 returned. One had vanished. Her heart broke, but there was no time for grief. The Mara demanded strength, and she still had 3 lives to protect. That same night, the air filled with laughter. Hyenas, their cries carried on the wind, chilling the night. Drawn by the scent of blood and fear, a pack closed in. Tamu herded the cubs into a narrow gully, standing above them, a single lioness against many. The hyenas circled, their eyes glinting, teeth clicking, waiting for a mistake. For hours she fought them back, lunging, roaring, clawing, each strike buying precious moments for her young. At last, with dawn breaking, the scavengers melted into the shadows. Exhausted, bloodied, but alive, Tamu stood victorious. By now her 4 cubs were 3. She was thin, scarred, and exhausted. Yet her spirit burned hotter than ever. The Mara was merciless, but so was she. A mother's love was her weapon, her shield, her reason to fight when everything else told her to surrender. Every day was a battle, every night a gamble. And though the world seemed determined to crush her, Tamu refused to bow. For the story of the Mara was not only about kings and thrones, it was also about mothers who carried the future on their shoulders, defying death itself to keep the flame alive. And Tamu was becoming a legend. For weeks, Tamu had endured storms of hunger and waves of danger. Against all odds, her 3 surviving cubs were still alive. But the Mara does not grant mercy for long. It only waits, watching until the next strike. One morning, as the mist lifted from the grasslands, a silence settled that was heavier than any roar. The cubs stirred restlessly, their small bodies pressed close to their mother. Something was wrong. The air was too still, and then chaos. From the brush, a powerful male lion erupted, a wanderer hardened by the wild, his mane coarse, his eyes blazing with the hunger for dominance. His mission was simple: destroy, eliminate the offspring of rivals, reset the bloodline. Tamu sprang to her feet, muscles tense, heart surging with terror and rage. She launched herself forward, teeth flashing, a storm of fury against the giant. She raked her claws across his muzzle, forcing him back for precious seconds. But her cubs scattered in panic, their cries filling the air. The male roared, sweeping his head, eyes searching for weakness, and then in the dust and confusion, two of the cubs vanished. When the intruder finally withdrew, Tamu's flanks were torn. Her body trembling from the fight, she called frantically, her voice echoing across the savannah. Only one cub answered. Her heart broke as she searched, her nose pressed into the earth following faint trails, her ears tuned to every whisper of sound. She walked for hours, calling, pacing, desperate, but as night fell, the Mara gave no answers. She curled around her single cub, her eyes wide with grief. From 4 to 3, and now to 1. It seemed the wild had claimed them all. 2 days later, hope flickered. As she wandered through the reeds at the edge of the marsh, she froze. A faint cry carried on the wind. Her ears twitched. She followed, heart pounding. And there, tangled in the tall grass, weak and trembling, were two of her missing cubs, alive. The reunion was explosive. Tamu rushed forward, licking them feverishly, pulling them close with her paws. The cubs nuzzled against her, mewing softly. Their tiny bodies pressed into her fur. Against every law of the savannah, she had found them again. It was a miracle carved out of blood and sorrow. Her family was not whole, but it was alive. Survival, however, never paused. With her cubs reunited, the dangers returned. Night after night, hyenas prowled at the edge of her hiding places. Rival lions stalked the winds, their roars a constant reminder that discovery meant death. Tamu moved constantly, never sleeping deeply, always leading her cubs to new refuge, into marshes, beneath thorn thickets across dangerous plains. She hunted tirelessly, every kill a desperate gamble to feed the mouths that cried for her. And though the cubs grew stronger with each passing day, Tamu bore the scars of her fight. Her ribs pressed against her skin, her paws cracked from the relentless marches, yet her eyes never dimmed. While Tamu fought unseen battles far away, Notch still ruled. He roamed with his sons, their roars carrying the weight of power across the Mara. To him, the empire still felt secure. His throne still stood. He did not know of the private war Tamu was fighting. He did not hear the cries of his hidden cubs, nor see the blood she spilled in their defense. And yet both stories were bound together, the king and the mother. Two sides of the same legacy. One would face the fall of a throne. The other, the daily battle to keep that throne's heirs alive. By now, Tamu's journey had become more than survival. It was defiance. Each dawn was proof that even against the savage law of the Mara, a mother's will could carve space for life. But the storm had not passed. Greater dangers were approaching, for even kings are not eternal. And as rival males advanced across the plains, the kingdom of Notch trembled. Tamu's fight was far from over, and the fall of the king was drawing near. For years, Notch had ruled as a monarch of the Mara, but he was no longer alone. By his side stood his 5 sons, dark-maned, powerful, growing into predators that mirrored his own might. Together, they were an army. Their roars rolled across the plains like thunder, striking fear into any intruder who dared approach. With his sons, Notch seemed invincible. His dynasty had been secured, his pride protected, his bloodline written into the soil of the savannah. But power in the Mara is never permanent. Even the strongest kingdom casts shadows long enough to attract challengers. From the east, 3 dark figures emerged, Romeo, Cloud, and Pavarotti, males of the Paradise Pride. They were fierce, determined, and united by a single purpose: to take what Notch possessed. They had roamed for weeks, their eyes fixed on the Marsh Pride, their ears tuned to every roar. They knew the cost of power, and they were ready to pay it in blood. The day came when the 3 advanced boldly into Notch's territory. Their roars shattered the dawn, a declaration of war across the grasslands. The Mara trembled. Notch rose to meet the sound, his mane bristling, his sons tense at his side. The old king paced forward, muscles rippling, his golden eyes burning with defiance. This was the test he had known would come. For years he had held the throne. For years he had been the storm that silenced all others. But time had shifted. His body no longer carried the same fire. His strength no longer burned as hot as it once had. He looked upon his sons, young, strong, eager, but still unseasoned. They were not yet ready for a war like this, and in that moment Notch understood this battle could destroy them all. The Paradise males roared again, stepping closer, their muscles coiled for violence. They wanted blood. They wanted the throne. Notch's sons growled, their paws tearing the earth, ready to leap. But Notch did not move. His head lowered, his mane heavy in the wind. Then slowly, deliberately, the king turned away. It was not cowardice. It was wisdom. To fight would mean the death of his sons, the very future he had worked to protect. To withdraw was to lose the throne but preserve the bloodline. And so Notch made the choice no king wishes to make. He surrendered the kingdom, not in fear, but in sacrifice. Romeo, Cloud, and Pavarotti surged into the Marsh Pride, their dominance unquestioned. The lionesses submitted. The land changed hands. The throne that Notch had guarded for years was gone in a single sunrise. His roar no longer carried across the Mara. His empire had fallen, but he did not vanish into the shadows of defeat. With his sons at his side, he retreated into the wild, carrying with him something greater than territory, the living proof of his legacy. While kingdoms clashed and crowns shifted, Tamu continued her lonely war. She did not know of the rivals who had toppled the king. She only knew the endless struggle to keep her cubs alive. 2 stories, 2 battles, both bound by blood, both driven by the same force: survival. The Mara had witnessed the fall of many rulers, yet few had walked away as Notch did, not defeated but transformed. His throne was gone, but his sons lived. His blood still flowed through the Pride. His legacy would outlast the moment of his surrender, for in the wild, true kings are not measured only by the thrones they keep, but by the legacies they leave behind. And Notch's legacy was only beginning to echo. The throne of the Marsh Pride was gone. Romeo, Cloud, and Pavarotti ruled where Notch once stood. Their roars echoed through the valleys, announcing a new order. But Notch had not died on that battlefield. With his sons at his side, he disappeared into the grasslands, carrying his bloodline with him. He was no longer a king of land, but he remained a king of legacy. Far from the Pride, Tamu still walked her lonely path. Her body was thin, her steps weary, but her spirit unbroken. Against hyenas, against hunger, against rival lions, she had kept her cubs alive. She had lost some, yes. But the survivors were proof of her defiance. Proof that even in exile, a mother's will could bend the laws of the Mara. The fall of Notch and the struggle of Tamu were threads of the same tale. One was the story of a king forced to surrender his throne. The other, of a mother who refused to surrender her young. Together they formed a legend, not of endless victory, but of sacrifice, resilience, and survival. For in the Mara, power is fleeting. Territories shift, thrones collapse, rivals rise and fall like the turning of seasons, but legacy endures. Notch's roar still lived in his sons. Tamu's courage still beat in the hearts of her cubs. Together they had carried their blood into the future, and in that future their names would not be forgotten. This was the fall of a king, and the resistance of a mother. But it was not the end. The blood of Notch and Tamu flowed on, shaping the destiny of the Mara for years to come. Because in the wild, true legends are not written in crowns or battles. They are written in the lives that survive, and the echoes that never fade, and the echo of Notch was only just beginning.